Namaskar, good evening viewers. You're watching the news with your host Kriti Mishra. Get ready for your daily dose of national and global developments. First up, the headlines. Parliament adjourned Sanadai. Lok Sabha records 129% productivity during budget session. More than 99% productivity in Rajya Sabha. Third indigenization list with more than 100 defence equipment and systems released. Rajnath Singh lays stress on self-reliance in defence sector. Fourth India-US Ministerial 2+2 dialogue to be held in Washington, D.C. on April 11th. Talks to take forward comprehensive global strategic partnership. India sends fuel supplies to Sri Lanka. 36,000 metric tons of petrol and 40,000 metric tons of diesel reach Colombo. America cautions citizens on travelling to island nation. Russia agrees to 10 humanitarian corridors. NATO member states to give more arms to Ukraine. Vote on resolution seeking Russia's exit from UN Human Rights Council. On to our flash news segment now. Ahead of cabinet overhaul in preparation of 2024 state elections, all Andhra Pradesh ministers resign. Over 85% of adult population is fully vaccinated, says Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia. Government issues notification regarding mandatory fitness of motor vehicles through automated testing stations. Building storage capacity of renewable energy will add impetus to tackling climate change, says Union Power Minister R.K. Singh. Amarnath Yatra to start from 30th June. Online registration to start from 11th of April. Tamil Nadu government justifies property tax hike, says move taken for long overdue development projects. Mumbai High Court directs all striking MSRTC employees to resume work by 22nd April. UGC to establish BHIMA chairs at Delhi University and Guru Ghasidas University in Chhattisgarh. Former Burkina Faso president gets life sentence in murder case. Prime Minister Modi expresses gratitude to health sector for keeping planet protected. Wishes for everyone's good health and wellness on World Health Day. Now news from Parliament of India. Proceedings of both the Houses of Parliament were adjourned sine die a day ahead of the scheduled time. After papers were laid on table of the House, Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu started delivering the concluding remarks. Shiv Sena members tried to raise the issue of alleged misappropriation of INS Vikrant Fund. Stating that their behaviour went against the dignity of the House, the Chairman adjourned the House sine die without making the concluding remarks.
Honourable members, as we are adjourning sine die today, the answers to questions of starred, unstarred and short notice questions listed for today are treated as read on the table of the House. And for that reason, I am not allowing any other issues also to be raised. So, the House stands adjourned sine die.
Proceedings for the budget session of Parliament were adjourned sine die in the Lok Sabha on Thursday. 27 sittings were held in this session and productivity of the House stood at 129%. Before adjourning the proceedings, Speaker Om Birla presented the details of the business of the House. He said that sittings of the House lasted for 177 hours and 50 minutes during the session. 182 start questions were answered. The Lok Sabha proceedings for the budget session began on January 31st. The motion of thanks on President's address was discussed for 15 hours and 13 minutes.
ये सत्र 31 जनवरी 2022 को आरंभ हुआ था। इस सत्र के दौरान कुल 27 बैठकें हुई जो लगभग 170 घंटे 50 मिनट तक चली। 8वें सत्र में सभा की कुल कार्य उत्पादकता 129%, 129% रही। सभा की कार्रवाई अनिश्चित काल के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
And the Lok Sabha Speaker said on February 1st, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the Union Budget for 2022-23. This was discussed on February 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. The lower house discussed the budget for more than 15 hours and 35 minutes. It also passed the demands for grants under the control of the Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Road and Transport, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Ministry of Commerce and Industry and Ministry of Shipping. On 24th March, all other demands for grants of the remaining ministries were put to vote and were passed together. 12 bills were introduced and 13 bills were passed. Members presented 486 matters of public interest under Rule 377. 62 reports were presented by various parliamentary committees during the session. While two discussions, climate change under Rule 193 and the situation in Ukraine, were completed, the discussion on need to promote sports in India was not completed.
कुल 13 विधेयक पारित हुए हैं। 5 विषयों पर अनुदान मांगों पर चर्चा हुई है। देर रात्रि तक चर्चा हुई है। बजट पर भी देर रात्रि तक चर्चा हुई है। सदन निर्बाध रूप से चले, बिना व्यवधान के चले। सदनों में चर्चा संवाद हो, अच्छी वाद विवाद हो, क्योंकि ये देश की सर्वोच्च संस्था है।
The budget session of Parliament started on 31st of January and its first phase lasted till 11th of February. The Union Budget was presented in the first phase. The second phase began on March 14th. The meeting of the budget session was adjourned sine die a day before the scheduled program. Commenting on the productivity of the budget session of Parliament, Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi said a total of 11 bills were passed in both houses of Parliament.
13 bills were introduced, 12 in Lok Sabha, 1 in Rajya Sabha, and 13 bills passed by Lok Sabha, 11 bills were passed by Rajya Sabha. 11 bills have been passed by both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha.
And the government has rejected the opposition's allegation of avoiding discussion on inflation. Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi said the government had given permission for a full discussion on various issues during the budget session. He said the opposition had requested both houses to be adjourned sine die on April 7th ahead of schedule. Earlier, Leader of Opposition in Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, said he wanted discussion on various issues including inflation, but the government was not ready.
हालांकि आपने एजेंडा दिया था कि शुक्रवार तक चलाएंगे, हम तो तैयार थे, लेकिन उन्होंने आज ही सुबह वो 11 बजे, 11:15 बजे बंद कर दिया कि सरकार को जो गरीबों की समस्या है, किसानों की समस्या है, अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट युवकों की समस्या है, इसको सुलझाना नहीं चाहते।
कि हमने अप्रोप्रिएशन बिल में 8 घंटा अलो किया था, फाइनेंस बिल में सेपरेटली डिस्कशन हुआ था, यूक्रेन में डिस्कशन हुआ था, और इसमें वही विषय बोला है जी, जो प्राइस राइज वगैरह जो बोलते हैं इन्फ्लेशन, वही विषय बोला है। उन्होंने बोला नहीं नहीं हमको नहीं चाहिए, और फ्राइडे तो ऐसे भी प्राइवेट मेंबर बिल है, बंद कर दो। दैट वाज देयर रिक्वेस्ट।
And moving on now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh released the third positive indigenization list of 101 items. The list includes major equipment and platforms. It lays special focus on systems that are likely to translate into firm orders in next 5 years. The weapons and platforms will be indigenized progressively from December 2022 to December 2027. Under the provisions of Defence Acquisition Procedure 2020, 101 items will now be procured from local sources. The third list includes highly complex systems, sensors, weapons and ammunitions like lightweight tanks, mounted artillery gun systems, guided extended range, naval utility helicopters, next generation offshore patrol vessels as well.
रक्षा क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता और डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट्स को बढ़ावा देना, यह हमारे 2 महत्वपूर्ण उद्देश्य हैं। और इस लिस्ट के जारी होने से पब्लिक और प्राइवेट सेक्टर के एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेशन के साथ इंडिजिनाइजेशन को बढ़ावा मिलेगा और इन दोनों लक्ष्यों को प्राप्त करने की दिशा में हम और तेजी से आगे बढ़ेंगे।
And the next 2+2 ministerial meeting between India and USA will take place on 11th of April in Washington, D.C. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will represent India at the meeting. Both leaders will discuss issues related to defense, security, as well as Indo-Pacific. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will also meet his counterpart, Antony Blinken, separately. India has said it is extending all possible help to Sri Lanka to face the challenge of economic crisis.
At the 4th India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue, which will take place on 11th of April in Washington, D.C., the US delegation led by Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. The dialogue would enable both sides to undertake a comprehensive review of cross-cutting issues in the India-US bilateral agenda related to foreign policy, defense and security.
Now in other news from the nation. President Ramnath Kovind visited the Parliament of Netherlands on Thursday. He also held a meeting with Prime Minister, several members of the Upper House of Netherlands Parliament, Speaker of the Senate, John Anthony, and Speaker of the House of Representatives, Vera Bergkamp. After the conclusion of the budget session of Parliament, Prime Minister Modi met Congress President Sonia Gandhi, National Conference Chief Farooq Abdullah, Samajwadi Party's Mulayam Singh Yadav and other leaders. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla were also present on the occasion. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla and Union Minister Sarbadan Sonowal attended the Yoga Utsav at the Red Fort. The health awareness program was organised by the Ministry of Ayush on the occasion of World Health Day. Om Birla said yoga is an important part of our life. The yoga event is part of the Amrit Mahotsav celebrations ahead of the International Day of Yoga. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla said, One Nation, One Platform for legislative bodies can be started from 2023 as part of the exercise to bring the proceedings of all legislatures of the country on one platform. He said everyone will get information about the proceedings of each legislature at one place, and work is going to be at fast pace in this direction. Union Minister Piyush Goyal invited Australian businesses to make in India for the world at an event organised by the Business Council of Australia in Sydney. He said India and Australia must aspire for $100 billion trade, with both countries now ready to come together in the field of science and technology, research and education. NEET 2022 exam for admission to medical undergraduate courses in all medical institutes of the country will be held on July 17th. NEET 2022 registration has started on the website neetnta.nic.in. Applicants can submit the application online. The government has made fitness tests mandatory for vehicles through automated testing stations. It will be implemented in a phased manner from April 2023. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highways said that from April 1st, 2023, fitness tests will be mandatory for heavy goods vehicles and heavy passenger motor vehicles through ATS. India has sent 36,000 metric tons of petrol and 40,000 metric tons of diesel to Sri Lanka on Wednesday evening. The fuel supplies come under the oil loan assistance of $500 million. Meanwhile, America warned its citizens against travelling to the island country amid unrest over the economic crisis in the island nation. And moving on now, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has called capacity building the need of the hour. He urged coordination among various agencies to successfully carry out operations at the grassroots level to deal with disasters. Addressing the annual conference on capacity building for Disaster Response 2022 in New Delhi, he said disaster-related missions cannot be accomplished with the help of technology and resources alone, but requires professional capacity building as well.
पहले से तैनाती का जो सिद्धांत है उसको राज्यों ने जमीन पर उतारने के लिए काम किया है और एनडीआरएफ की 12 बटालियन हमेशा इनके साथ कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर एसडीआरएफ के साथ खड़ी रहती है। इसको और नीचे ले जाने के लिए आपदा मित्र स्कीम को 350 जिलों में हमने लागू करने का काम किया है।
And time for a short break. Lots more on the other side.
What is India's perspective on global issues? How is India navigating its bilateral and multilateral relations? How do we decode foreign policy? And what is the impact India is having on the world? For an in-depth analysis of international affairs, watch Diplomatic Dispatch with me, Vikas Swaroop, only on Sansad TV.
We all know the importance of good health, but often we don't know how to achieve it. There's plenty of information available, but again, we don't know what is right and what is wrong. To know the truth and get your answers straight from some of India's top specialists, join me, Dr. Amrish Mittal, on Healthy India, only on Sansad TV.
Welcome back. You're watching the news. Now news from Ukraine and Russia conflict. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister has said the Russian military has agreed to 10 humanitarian corridors for safe evacuation of civilians in 3 eastern regions of the country. Residents from Donetsk, Luhansk areas will be evacuated to other cities. With Russia expected to intensify its military offensive in Ukraine's industrial eastern region in the coming days, Kiev has also urged NATO to provide it more weapons. In response to Ukraine's call, NATO Secretary General Jens Berg has called on member states of the organization to provide more weapons to Ukraine. He pointed out that while NATO member states are supplying Ukraine with weapons and other essential supplies, 30 more allies could also help. He clarified that this aid is not being provided by NATO as an organization. He also said it was important for NATO not to be dragged into a wider war with Russia. He said NATO is not sending troops to the war. And Mariupol's mayor has said over 5,000 civilians had died in the port city so far. The city is under the control of Russian troops. The statement comes at a time when Ukraine is gathering evidence of brutal killings of civilians in towns around its capital, Kiev. Meanwhile, the US and its Western allies have decided to impose new sanctions on Russia over war crimes. Ukrainian President Zelensky, in an address to the nation, warned that the Russian military is restructuring its forces to prepare for a new offensive in the east. And after the Bucha episode, most of the Western countries and USA are planning to increase sanctions against Russia. But sanctioning Russia is not going to be easy. The dependency of the world on Russian oil and gas and wheat makes the task very difficult. Take a look at this report.
Warring nations, Russia and Ukraine, are also known as the wheat bowl of the world. According to the Observatory of Economic Complexity in 2020, both the countries exported 28.47% of the world's wheat. Russia earned $10 billion and Ukraine $4.61 billion. The biggest importers were Egypt, Nigeria, Sudan, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, and Bangladesh. But with the beginning of the conflict and the sanctions imposed on Russia, the world now needs to prepare itself for food emergencies.
Russia's invasion disrupted the flow of food for millions of people around the world and caused prices to spike. The IFEs and food security funds are already working to address both the short-term and long-term effects of the invasion on global food prices and supplies.
The other important question is of energy. According to US in 2021, OECD Europe, the region that includes Netherlands, Germany, Poland and others, got 49% of its total crude oil from Russia. Russia also supplied 74% of its natural gas demand. As far as coal is concerned, OECD Europe's dependence on Russia was 32% of its needs. Although America has assured adequate crude supplies to European countries, nations like Germany are also drawing up their own plans for sustainable energy. On Wednesday, the German cabinet approved a 600-page Easter plan that expands offshore wind power and other renewable energy. Meanwhile, the shadow of COVID still lingers, handicapping economies struggling to get back on their feet. Energy from alternative sources is still in planning stages. Taking on Russia with sanctions is not altogether an easy task. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And in other news from other parts of the world. The Pakistan Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that the April 3rd ruling of National Assembly Deputy Speaker Qasim Khan Suri to dismiss the no-confidence motion against former Prime Minister Imran Khan was erroneous. The Supreme Court ruled that the no-trust motion remains intact while restoring the National Assembly. It also called the dissolution of the National Assembly unconstitutional. After the verdict, the National Assembly is being reconvened on Saturday. And now in other news from other parts. Japanese Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi met his Philippine counterpart, Delfin Lorenzana, on Thursday. The meeting was held ahead of the so-called 2+2 talks between the country's foreign and defense ministers, which are scheduled on Saturday. Kishi said he hoped the meeting would be an opportunity for both countries to enhance military cooperation. A Turkish court suspended the trial of 26 Saudis accused in the killing of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. It has ruled for the case to be transferred to Saudi Arabia. Khashoggi, a United States resident who wrote critically about Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, was killed in 2018 at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, where he had gone for an appointment to collect documents required for him to marry his Turkish fiancée. And Shanghai is converting another exhibition center into a makeshift hospital to take in more COVID-19 patients amid surging cases. The National Exhibition and Convention Center is being refurbished into Shanghai's largest makeshift hospital. It will offer 40,000 beds for people infected with COVID-19, but showing mild or no symptoms. The state-owned Shanghai Media Group said all the refurbishing will be completed on Friday. Local authorities said 19,982 new cases, of which 19,660 were asymptomatic, were registered in Shanghai on Wednesday. And mandatory vaccinations against COVID-19 are off the table in Germany after lawmakers on Thursday rejected the government's proposal with a clear majority. The vote followed months of debates and an impassioned plea by Health Minister, who told Parliament, "Today is the day to decide. Don't let us down." The draft law was turned down with 378 no votes against 296 in favour, with 9 abstentions. Now all the action from the world of sports. PV Sindhu has progressed to the quarterfinals at the Korea Open Super 500 badminton tournament today. World number 7 Sindhu, a two-time Olympic medalist, got the better of world number 26, Japan's Aya Ohori, 21-15, 21-10 in a lopsided contest to take her head-to-head against the Japanese to an overwhelming 12-0. World Championship silver medalist Kitambi Srikanth has also booked his place in the last 8 of the Korea Open. Srikanth saw off Israel's Mishra 21-18, 21-6 to set up a clash with local hope and former world number 1 Son Van Ho. All England silver medalist Lakshya Sen has, however, been ousted from the tournament after losing his second round match. Sen, ranked 9th in the world, went down 20-22, 19-21 to world number 24 Shesar Hiran in 33 minutes. In the 15th match of IPL being played at Navi Mumbai's D.Y. Patil Stadium, KL Rahul-led Lucknow Super Giants are taking on Rishabh Pant's Delhi Capitals. LSD have played 3 matches with 2 wins and are placed 5th in the points table. Delhi Capitals have 1 win and lost 1 in the tournament so far and are placed 7th. Kolkata Knight Riders registered an emphatic win over Mumbai Indians in Pune last night. Mumbai set up a target of 162 for KKR, with Kumar Yadav scoring a half-century. Tilak Verma impressing again with a 27-ball 38 not out, and Pollard not out on 22 of mere 5 balls. Chelsea's hold on the Champions League hangs precariously after Karim Benzema's hat-trick put Real Madrid in a position of par following the quarter-final first leg at Stamford Bridge. Havertz's header gave Chelsea hope before the break, but keeper Mendy's poor clearance seconds after the restart gifted Benzema his third to put Real Madrid in command of the tie before the second leg. And a new pilot school in northern Sweden is promoting emission-free aviation, offering the bulk of its classes on small electric aircraft. The Scandinavian country has committed to making all domestic flights fossil fuel by 2030. Instructors at the school say student pilots clock up some 200 hours of flight during their training. So using more sustainable aircraft could mean less environmental impact. Take a look at this report. In a hangar in northern Sweden, this aircraft is getting charged, ready for flight. The small 2-seater pipistrel electric airplane is the first of its kind to be certified for basic flight training. It has 2 battery packs, one in the nose, the other behind the cabin, that gives it a range of about 15 minutes. It's charged in about 30 minutes using renewable energy. Aircraft like these offer hope for more environmentally friendly education to prospective pilots. Airlines argue that flying accounts for just 2.5% of man-made greenhouse gas emissions. Efficient planes now use about the same amount of fuel per passenger as a half-full car. But green activists disagree. They are hoping that in 2 or 3 years, there may be players that can carry up to 30 to 40 passengers. And in 10 years, perhaps a full size. Bureau Report, Sansad TV. And before we sign off, a relook at the headlines now. Parliament adjourned Saturday. Lok Sabha records 129% productivity during budget session, more than 99% productivity in Rajya Sabha. Third indigenization list with more than 100 defence equipment and systems released. Rajnath Singh lays stress on self-reliance in defence sector. Fourth India-US Ministerial 2+2 dialogue to be held in Washington, D.C. on April 11th. Talks to take forward comprehensive global strategic partnership. India sends fuel supplies to Sri Lanka. 36,000 metric tons of petrol and 40,000 metric tons of diesel reach Colombo. America cautions citizens on travelling to island nation. In a unanimous 5-0 verdict, Pakistan Supreme Court calls the dismissal of no trust motion unconstitutional. National Assembly to be reconvened for no confidence vote on Saturday. And viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Namaskar.